Are you a lonely aardvark with no one to share your random pile of rocks with? Do you long for another aardvark to cuddle up with under your giant dinner plate? Then you need Aardvark, the #1 dating app for aardvark singles. Hello you, welcome to Geekism and welcome back to Pimp My Habitat. That was a weird one, wasn't it? Welcome to the series. If you are new here, this is where we take community submissions that think they need a little bit of work, a little bit of help, turning their Crapitat into a FABitat. They send it over to me and I put it through the rinser. Thank you very much to Brom, who has submitted this Aardvark habitat. They say, Pimp My Habitat. Here's my submission. Thought it was a cool concept in my head, but I'm new to Frontier games, so I'm not very good at building yet. It's very flat, and I would love to see your spin on this. Thanks. So there's, again, we always make a little bit of joke at the beginning that looking from the top of this, it just looked like an app, and it just really made me chuckle. But there's actually really quite some really nice bits here. I love the viewing area into the burrow. The burrow itself is actually really quite well done. That sort of dip down into the ground, and there's some rocks and bedding there, and I also love the other logs there that are sort of placed out with some nettles around them and stuff. A couple of really nice little features, but it's almost like we've had to have a little pile. So there's a little pile of rocks here, there's a little pile of wood here, there's a tree here. It's all very spread out, and I think what we're going to try and do here is make it all sort of tie in. Same with the terrain there. You can see it's actually quite nicely done. That there's like, here's the sand bit, here's the grass bit, but it almost looks like it's all a little bit too spread out, and really what we want to try and do is tie it all together a little bit into a more cohesive design. But I really love the burrow idea, love the viewing platform into the burrow. That's great. So I think we're going to expand on that, make it a little bit more of a bigger feature, and then maybe change up the terrain a little bit, maybe the planting a little bit as well. With it being an aardvark, they do burrow, so in zoos a lot of the planting has to be sort of up and out the way, because otherwise it's all going to get pulled out as the aardvark goes and does its thing. But either way, some really great points to work from here, so let's dive in. So I really love the idea of the burrow here and being able to see into it. So the first thing I really thought about, I had a look at some similar exhibit styles online at the various zoos, and one thing they often do is when there's a burrow like this, or like a cave area that guests can see into, they actually sort of extend the cave out into the guest viewing area as well. So you really feel that you're not just looking into the animal's den or the animal's burrow, you're actually in it, you're actually part of it. And this kind of this cohesive design that carries from one side of the fence to the other is a very sort of modern zoo approach. It's often used, foliage carries across, rock work carries across. That's something I thought we could do here. By carrying the burrow out and over a path. So normally, I'll be honest with you, my Pimp My Habitat rules are don't mess with the exterior sort of boundary of the thing, because these may well be placed down in zoos already and they need to kind of fit in a space. But I think here, with that window, pretty obvious that you've got a path here that you can use to look into the burrow. I just thought it was a really nice idea to kind of tie that in and sort of feed that in and make the guests feel like they're sort of going in and checking it out. So I've done a little bit of rock work here over the path. You could, of course, carry this on and really sort of spread it out, so they really have to sort of walk through the burrow. It'd be a really good space here on these stone walls to have some exhibit boards, with information about the animals. But again, this is outside the habitat, so for the most part, I wanted to kind of leave that alone. But I definitely felt that with the lovely sort of log work that you'd already got, and the actual sort of burrow bedding area itself being very natural, that even though the roof was a relatively decent attempt, it just felt a little bit too man-made, a little bit too fake. So instead we've gone for a rock work structure here, but still keeping the basis of what Brom had built here. We're not changing the bedding there at all. We're just moving these logs a little bit to tie in with the rock work there and just kind of give them a bit more of an interesting shape. One of them, in fact, even goes right up to the glass, so you're kind of going to have to look and move around it. Again, something I've noticed a lot looking at zoos lately is that they limit your view in some areas to give you sort of almost like you're exploring the habitat, or you're discovering it for the first time, rather than it just kind of being a big stage and a big show. So that's most of the the bunker, that bit done there. The rest of it happens with foliage. So again, love this the log work there with the nettles around it. Thought it was really great. We're going to go on to do a little bit more foliage in a minute, but these glass panels, they just don't seem too realistic with them just being a big swathe of glass. It can happen, you can get these big swathes of glass, but probably for these smaller exhibits you're talking more sort of panes of glass. So we're going to make the glass barrier look like panes here by just adding some pillars in and some stonework at the bottom there. And another thing that is really common in zoo habitats is this sort of secondary fencing. So just a small amount of fencing that goes in front of the main set of fencing there, just to stop guests being right up on the habitat, especially kids as well, especially with glass panels. You've not got kids sitting there with not licking glass like the weirdos do. I have a 2-year-old, and I'm very aware of what kids do. So often they have this sort of secondary fencing just to kind of keep you a little bit further away. It's going to help with the animals' welfare, the animal stress levels, but also as a safety feature as well, especially when it's things like glass for little kids leaning on it and what have you. So again, as I mentioned, aardvarks are burrowing animals, and they often do it in zoos, of course. So one thing zoos often have to do is build their burrowing animal exhibits into sort of big concrete vats, basically, and they fill them up with dirt, so there's no way they can burrow out. But then a lot of the foliage has to kind of be up and out of the way as well, because otherwise they would burrow through the roots and stuff would just constantly get pulled up. So you'll often find they have these flower beds, for want of a better word, really, these sorts of raised areas, either from concrete or wood, that they can pull up and place some foliage in that sort of breaks up the exhibit, provides a little bit of shelter from the sun during the day, makes it look a little bit nicer as far as the guests are concerned, but keeps it all up and out the way of the aardvark there, so they're not really causing too much of a bother. Again, I really enjoyed the foliage that you'd done around the log here, but just wanted to get a little bit of a variation in there, and we are quite limited in the amount of coverage we can have here for an aardvark, so I was sort of using a few larger pieces there, more sort of cost effectively as far as the coverage is concerned there. And again, taking those rocks, there was a big pile of rocks before for no particular reason, so we've kind of carried the rocks up from the bunker there, up from the, I keep saying bunker like there's going to be an air raid or something. Terrain wise is pretty much fine. I'm just kind of breaking up those areas so they're not so sort of conformed, using the dirt that we could use there to give some runs, because animals very often sort of have regular runs that they use for scenting and things like that. Just place down small food and water tubs here, and then as far as enrichment goes, a rubbing pad and a termite mound. So there you go, pretty quick turnaround with this one. A lot of really great foundation there in the first place, but it started off a little bit sort of utilitarian. We've sort of made it lush, we've made it natural, and I really think it's turned out really quite well. But again, taking some of the original stuff that was there and just sort of shining them up a little bit. That's the whole point of Pimp My Habitat, and of course the aardvark is super happy in there as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to see your habitat on here, all you have to do is pop it onto the Steam Workshop with the hashtag Pimp My Habitat, a little bit of information about what you like, what you don't like, and hopefully you'll see it here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, be good.